So, my dear faithful, allow me first to express my joy to be amongst you, and to share with you during a few minutes some thoughts about the present situation of the Church, about the society. There are so many things to say in so many different directions that, of course, we have to choose. And there are certainly also many different ways to give such a description. One would be very thoroughly study. It's not exactly the way I'm going to go tonight. What I intend to do is to throw different, various glances at the Church today, with having in background a question or an answer. And it is, how are we going to deal with these people? In other words, what are the relations which of the society towards Rome, and why? If I propose to have this as an underline, a background, it is because it will always be a major question, because we are Catholics, period. If we weren't, what's happening in the Church would not be of much concern. If we are Catholics, we are members of a body, and if this body is suffering, we suffer. And we don't want this body to suffer. We would like it to be sane, to be healthy, to be holy. So, after having said that, we could start with a historical element first. Till the year 2000, you have a great mainline in the Church. I may say the mainline continues today, which turns all the major means of defense of the Church towards itself in our persons. Till then, these weapons, very mighty weapons, were used against those who did put in danger the Catholic faith. Words like excommunication, schismatic, don't go with these people, avoid them, have nothing to do with them, don't read what they say, what they write. All these are measures which are perfectly legitimate, taken by the Church in the past to protect the faith, to defend it. At the time of the Council, we see that these words disappear. Maybe they are in the drawer, maybe they are rusting, but suddenly they are taken out of the drawer, and abundant use is done, but on a very specific target, which is no longer the usual target. Isn't it funny, or isn't it curious that the only one about which the word schismatic will be used today, it's us. if you look at the reality of the Church, if you look even at the new Codex of Canon Law, you will see that indeed there are plenty of schismatic attitudes, and schismatics all over the world. But for them, no, we don't use that word. But it goes so far as in the encyclical on Ecumenism, on unity, Utunum Sint, the Holy Father goes so far as to say that the word separate, brethren, should not be used. We shouldn't say that they are separate. It's interesting. This main line continues, and nevertheless, in Rome itself, there is a certain change of attitude. Not total, but sufficient enough that we hear, since the year 2000, that there is a proposal, that Rome wants to propose us a solution. What is this solution very concretely? Cardinal Castellon told me last year, well, I don't have a word for it. If you don't have a word, that means you don't yet know what it is. Because when you know what it is, you can give a word to it. And so you see, when they say Bishop Fellay has refused or rebuked any proposal from Rome, wait a minute. They have never made a concrete proposal. It was always a little bit foggy in that direction, in the direction of apostolic administration, but also Opus Dei, also the military ordinariate, around that direction. But what does this mean? It goes in the direction of granting a kind of personal jurisdiction. But now, what are the limits of it? What are the freedoms which will be granted inside? What would be the possibility of opening new places? All this has never been dealt. So once again, it gives a direction. What we see in Campos was at a certain time an idea that they would propose to us. But look at the story of Campos, it's very interesting. They promised to Campos whole Brazil. It was very clear that the proposal from Castellon at the start, when they promised to grant something for the priest of Campos, was for the territory, the whole state of Brazil. So how do we come to the only little diocese of Campos as a territory of this administration? The answer? Well, the nuncio and several members of the permanent council of the Conference of the Bishops of Brazil went to Rome and opposed the idea of Rome. And if only this territory was extended to the borders of Campos, it's just because the Bishop of Campos was in agreement with it. I just tried to guess what would have happened if the Bishop of Campos would have opposed. They probably would have even reduced it to something less. These things are not considered often. Nevertheless, they are very important. They are very important. Why? Because there is a lot of tactics. There is a lot of tactics because there is not enough conviction on the side of Rome. They like us. They like us because they see that what we do is good. word of Cardinal Castrillon. The fruits are good, hence the Holy Ghost is there. And I asked him, and where do these fruits come from? There, no answer. But nevertheless, they are so far as to recognize that the fruits are good. So we take that. Good point. So, as they see that the fruits are good, they would like to do something for us. But this something, how far does it go? We have a certain vision of the church, which is directing our action. When Rome comes to us and say, okay, listen, let's have an agreement. We are going to grant you something now. Does the vision that Rome has correspond? Is it in harmony with our vision or not? This is a fundamental question which we have solved, but we have requested Rome to show itself in action, because I told them words are not sufficient. We want to see. Our vision is the following. In the Catholic Church, which is absolutely necessary to be saved, you have only Catholics. It seems very simple expression. You may wonder, what else could we say than that? In the church, you have only Catholics. Well, Cardinal Ratzinger, it was around 85, gave a conference in Italy where he said, the church has a definition, mystical body of Christ. But there is a problem with that definition, because it is not fitting with the reality. Why? Because in such a case, either you are a member or you are not a member of the church. He continued by saying that's why, after the Second World War, especially the German theologian has gone into research into the Holy Scripture in order to find a concept that would be more fitting with the reality, and they have found people of God. In other words, when you use people of God, you use a word and a concept by which you know who is in and who is out. If you want another, let's say, picturesque description, if you go in Europe, you will find one of these medieval towns which have still the walls. These walls now, they are inside of a city which is much larger. But anyway, as long as you have the walls, you have people who are inside and people who are outside. In Rome, for example, now, you have fuori le mura. San Lorenzo, fuori le mura. The Basilica of St. Lawrence, outside of the walls. So you have people inside, people outside. If you take the walls away, you no longer know who is in and who is out. And that was one of the major acts and action line given by the council to kick out the walls of the church, to demolish the borders. This was done with one word. Till the council, we say, the Church of Christ is the Catholic Church. Council Vatican II renounces, or more than renounces, does not want to make use of this little is. Is which expresses the identity. The Church of Christ, the Church that Christ has founded, is identical to and with the Catholic Church. No, the Council, in the name of Ecumenism, will say subsists. The Church of God, the Church of Christ, subsists in the Catholic Church. And the reason they have given of this change of definition is very grave, you know. The definition gives the identity, gives the essence, says what it is. If you change that, that means you change the reality. The reason given is, well, the church is not only inside, the church is also outside. I read here something which will be, during the whole talk, coming back again and again. It is Casper. Casper, who is going to tell us very interesting things. He tells us that a decisive point, something which made possible ecumenism, is this change. I read. It's taken from an article found on the internet, Current Problems in Ecumenical Theology, in the year 2000. You can find it in the place Center for Theological Inquiry, Princeton University. The decisive element of the Second Vatican Council's ecumenical approach is the fact that the Council no longer identifies the Church of Jesus Christ simply with the Roman Catholic Church, as had Pope Pius XII as lately as in the encyclical Mystici Corporis 1943. The Council replaced est, the Catholic Church is Jesus Christ's Church, with subsisted. The Church of Jesus Christ subsists in the Catholic Church, which means that the Church of Christ, of Jesus Christ, is made concretely present and can be met, which is a very strange expression, but okay. This does not exclude that also outside the visible structure of the Catholic Church, there are not only individual Christians, but also elements of the Church, and with them an ecclesial reality, a church reality. It is not that beyond the boundaries of the Catholic community there is an ecclesial vacuum. So you see, Casper is going to say that's the start of ecumenism. How is it possible that the Catholic Church can make ecumenism, can do ecumenism? There is one condition, and this condition is that the Church renounces its identity, renounces its exclusivity. We will see a little bit later on, but you have it here. And so with this new idea, of course, you can express it on different ways. Either you will say they extend the boundaries, or you just say they have everybody come in. But anyway, that makes that we pass from a one-species vision to a multi-species house. In other words, the church has turned into a zoo. Now, the zoo has broadened so much that they are ready to open a little special place in the big zoo for the dinosaurs. In other words, the approach of Rome towards us today is an ecumenical approach. Is a, let me say, broad-thinking approach where they want everybody to be in, so why not also these, once again, excuse me, crocodiles, dinosaurs, fossils, whatever you want. But there is one condition, and that's very important. These type of animals, you keep them very, very closely, securely enclosed. You don't let them go all over. Imagine crocodiles, dinosaurs all over the zoo. Never. So when we ask the Mass for everybody, we get a no. I think it's important to understand that. To understand that beyond this very nice smile which comes from Rome, which says, listen, we are going to make peace now, I think to grant you something. This is something which Rome is about to grant, well, proposes, is not what we expect. It looks like, seems fine. Watch out. Look at the way they behave with the others who have gone into these steps, the ecclesiadein groups. Look at the way they are treated, either at the level of Rome or at the level of the bishops. And you will see that despite the fact that now, okay, they may have now the idea to introduce us in the zoo, it remains that we are considered still as highly dangerous species. How do you call that? The polar bear, you put it under very high fences. And once again, we have to look deep into these questions. From the start, we said to Rome, listen, we know what you have done to St. Peter, to the Society of St. Peter, and we don't trust you. We don't want to go the same way. You just cut off their head, Father Becket. And I had it confirmed by the Cardinal himself, who tried to justify what he had done. Why did he kick out of office Father Becket? Well, the word is a little bit too strong. Father Becket was terminating his term, and he could have been re-elected. There was many things that had to be decided at that chapter. One of the points was to know for how long, would be the length of a term, and then, of course, whether he could be re-elected. Anyway, the Cardinal decided on both points, on the term and on who would be the successors, in such a way that Father Becket was really put out of office. And the Cardinal explained me. He said, I have nothing against those who want to say the old Mass, but I cannot accept that somebody makes something in writing against a general law of the Church. He said Father Becket wanted to impose to the priests of the Society of St. Peter an oath against the new Mass. Now the reality was not exactly an oath and not exactly against the new Mass. It was the question of Rocca di Papa. Rome had forced all the permanent members of the Society of St. Peter to meet in Rocca di Papa because they were highly divided on the question to know whether they would accept or not to say from time to time the new Mass, at least with the bishops for the Christmas Mass. And at that occasion, Monsignor Pell explained them that it was his job to bring them to the new Mass, and that the Society of St. Peter would only bring fruits in the church when it would have accepted the new Mass. Finally, they made a compromise. The compromise was that every priest would make the promise, not the oath, that if they would go to the celebration of the Christmas Mass, that would be the only occasion where they would say the new Mass. So that was this famous oath against the new Mass. Cardinal Castellon explained me that's the reason why he stopped him. He said, I cannot let him continue to be a superior general. He said that to me. And we know now that just before, about the same time, there was a synod in Rome to which Father Becket had been also invited. At the end of the synod, there was, of course, a big concelebrate, and Father Becket had been invited to concelebrate, and he refused, to his credit. Now, Monsignor Pell said to Father Becket after that, you have failed. You have missed the test. This invitation to the concelebration was the test. And Father Becket, who refused to concelebrate, has been clearly, because of that, put out of office. And this is just before Rome starts with a big smile towards us. It was impossible to trust them. And so we continued during the first meetings. Our attitude was always the same. That is, we said, you demolish St. Peter will trust you, St. Peter comes to you, you promise them the old Mass, and you kick them down. So how do you want us to trust you? And the answer, you may have already heard it, because I've said that so many times. The answer came on two different occasions, but it's twice the same. Oh, it's not the same. The Society of St. Peter is against the new Mass. You are in favor of the old Mass. Two times. How do you want to take that seriously? Then we would have to protest and say, hey, wait a minute, we are more against the new Mass than them. And I hope also more in favor of the old, but that's why from the start we have requested that things would happen. I told him, listen, neither we, priests, bishops, nor our faithful are going to jump into such an affair. They have been betrayed. You have betrayed us. So you must first show that you really want to repair that. And one of the signs which we have requested is that the Mass would be again freed for the whole Church. Some claim that when I have made such a request, I have already jeopardized the whole thing, requesting something impossible. But I'm sorry. We know that in Rome in 86, the Pope requested or set up a commission of 9 cardinals to whom he asked, is the old Mass abrogated? Did the new Mass abrogate the old Mass? And we know that to that question, on these 9 cardinals, 8 answered no. The new Mass did not abrogate the old Mass. So this happened in 1986. But we knew also that just in the year 2000, around that, this opinion according to which the Mass had not been abrogated was common in Rome. So that's why we said, listen, this Mass has never been abrogated. That means this law, this permission, this invitation, this requirement that the priest says the old Mass is still in vigor. You don't need to go back to the bulla of Saint Pius V. Of course, we can go there. We can make this appeal, saying, "Listen, Saint Pius V said that nobody can be punished if he says the old Mass." But here, it's not even that. The new Mass, the old Mass, has not been suppressed. It's still there. If it is still there, it's still a law, a general law of the Church. And then, if this is true, the pretense that it will be forbidden is a great injustice. A tremendous injustice. It would be about the same to get a ticket when you drive correctly. You drive your 50 miles an hour on the highway and you get a ticket as if you would have driven 120 miles an hour. It's out of the right. It's really, directly, plainly injustice. And so what we ask is that this injustice be suppressed. That's all. Nothing more. We don't request the moon. And you know the answer was also very, very interesting, because the answer was the following when we asked for that. The answer? Fundamentally, the Pope does agree that the old Mass has never been abrogated. And so do think Sodano, Ratzinger, Medina, who was the prefect of the liturgy, Castrillon, Herranz, so all the top cardinals of the Curia, do all think that the old Mass has never been abrogated. And the immediate consequence is that every priest has the right to say it. Then he continues, but you have the secretaries of the congregation and the under-secretaries of the congregations. They don't agree. That was the answer from Rome. In other words, the boss does agree, but the under-boss don't, so we can't go. We can't grant it. In writing, we have, as a justification of why Rome does not grant this, some people, faithful and bishops, think that if this would be granted, it would be a blame against the new Mass and Paul VI's work. Some bishop and faithful. What is this? I thought that there was a head in the Church and its name was the Pope. I thought he was the one who had to lead and to give the direction. Who is this some people and faithful and priests and bishops? Who is this? And this is the reason given to not to grant it. Well, there is another reason which is about the same, which Cardinal gave me last year. He said, the Pope thinks that if he would grant that, he would lose the control. But I'm sorry, the control is already lost, so more or less, well, there would be a fight. We are all certain of that. There would be a fight. And they don't want the fight. They don't want the fight because they are not convinced. They're not ready to put the price because they don't see the worth of it. And that's also what I told them. Well, I did not say so bluntly, you don't see. I just said, we are like a sign of contradiction. We experience it every day. We see it in our own families. Wherever we go, immediately, bang, an enormous controversy. And that's typical, and that you find in the whole world. We come somewhere, bang, it's like a bomb. Immediately the sleeping priests and bishops stand up, wake up. It's as if we would be the devil, or even worse than the devil today. And I told him, we are a sign of contradiction. And the day Rome takes us, this sign of contradiction extends to the whole church. I said to him, he looked at me with big eyes. He did not want to believe that. I said, but when this is going to happen, we are not ready to hear from Rome the next day. Please, in the name of the peace, make a compromise. Give something. At the same time, we have to keep an eye on what's happening in the Ecclesia Dei groups and also in the church in general. In the society, Society of Ecclesia Dei, we have very interesting things which are happening. For example, Society of St. Peter. Just to give you an example of in what kind of mess they throw themselves. They have the permission, as they have the Pontifical of 62, to have the minor orders, the tonsure, all these ceremonies of the old Pontifical, the different steps towards the priesthood. So they have the ceremonies. But they claim that they follow the new Code of Canon Law. And the new Code of Canon Law says that you are a cleric when you are deacon. And the obligations of the future priest, like for example the celibacy, start with the deaconate. And the same for the breviary. Now, in the old ways, you become a cleric with a tonsure. And the obligation of the celibacy is linked with the subdeaconate, where you have a very special ceremony at the start, where the bishop is asking to the candidate to show their determination. And he wants them, you will never be able to come back. This celibacy is forever. So now reflect. It's the last time to reflect. If you are decided, make the step. And he makes a step forward. The Society of St. Peter has kept the ceremony, but they no longer believe that there is any obligation or link with it. And this has started a great controversy amongst themselves. You have some, amongst them their Superior General now, Father de Villers, and others who claim that no, all these ceremonies, they are just nice things, but have no obligations, no consequences. You really are and start to become a cleric when you are a deacon. and not when you are tonsured, and not when you receive the minor orders. It went so far that certain bishops, modern bishops, who gave them these orders, had to say during their sermons, hey, wait a minute, when I'm making a cleric, I'm making a cleric. When I am giving the ordination of the subdeaconate, I am really making subdeacons. He went so far that Vicar General told them, listen, we have big problems there, because we start to have doubts on the validity of the ordinations which you receive, because you don't seem to have the intention to receive them, if you don't want to receive the obligations. Really, it's a mess. And so when Bishop Rifan came to visit them some years ago, he was asked, so how do you solve that problem? And he said, oh, we don't have the problem with the administration. We have the possibility of having clerics from the start, which makes sense. It's really nonsense to pretend that you will have a ceremony which is producing no effect. That's nonsense. Because then it's a pure theater. These ceremonies have no effect. That means it's pure theater. It's cinema. Nothing real anymore. Oh, it's terrible. Their present professor of dogma in Vigratsbad, in their seminary for the French and German, sticks to the theory that the anaphora of Adai and Mary being declared valid without words of consecration is an infallible statement from Rome. I mean, that's another big scandal that came in the year 2000, 2001. Rome decided that a Mass celebrated by non-Catholic, but by the Chaldeans, which are separate from the church since the 4th century, so it's a long time ago. They have a Mass, we call that the anaphora of Adai and Mary. Adai is for Judas Thaddeus, so it's a Mass which has been written by one of the apostles. Mary is not the Blessed Virgin Mary, it's Mari, M-A-R-I, and it's one of the 72 disciples. Now, this Mass is said presently by the non-Catholics without the words of consecration. And Rome has decided that this Mass without words of consecration would nevertheless be a valid Mass, which is absolutely unbelievable. That's really, you can jump to the deck with such statements. It's pure demolition. It's nonsense. We protested. We really protested against that. And we said, listen, what are you doing here? The Church has always taught that indeed we find manuscripts very old, and all the oldest manuscripts don't have the words of consecration. That's very well known. That's the law of the arcane. That is, in the 1st century of the Church, the Church did not want to put in writing these so sacred words so that they may not fall into the hands of pagans. But the fact that you don't have the words in the manuscripts does not mean that they did not say that at Mass. And this is true for the Chaldeans, this is true also for the Latin Rite. All the manuscripts of the Mozarabic Rite, that is the Mass which was celebrated in Spain, none of them has the words of consecration. The Gallican, about the half, don't have the words of consecration. Once again, that's only the writing part. And it was done so to prevent that these so sacred words would fall in bad hands. So we told them, and one of the members of the commission who had decided in favor when we told him, but listen, that's the law of the arcane, he said, oh, that's true. How could I have forgotten that? According to our knowledge, the Commission, who had decided in favor of the validity, has turned back its decision last June, well, now it's 1 year ago, but never been published. And I just wonder how they would publish that. Two statements which are absolutely contradictory. How can they now do that? What is certain is that what they have done makes the great, great joy of the modernists. Here in the States you have a modernist, I just forgot the name, but he said, finally the end of the theology of the magic words. You see, for them the consecration is, how do you say, hocus pocus? Magics. And they laugh at these magics because they don't believe in it. They don't believe in the might of the sacraments and the sacraments form because they don't believe in the divinity of our Lord. That's the root. They don't want to recognize that Jesus is really God. If Jesus is purely a man, his words are also purely human. If they are purely human, they will have no divine effect. That's behind. In other words, what Rome has done by accepting the validity of such a thing, she has just jeopardized the whole theology of the sacraments. She has demolished a whole set of dogmas because we touched the dogma here. The Council of Trent has clearly said that you need 3 elements for the validity of the sacrament. You need a form, the matter, and the intention of the right minister. Now the form is words. And the definition of a sacrament is, it is a sensitive or visible sign which is producing invisibly what it means. Now, if you no longer have a meaning that is a sign, you will no longer have the reality. I have a simple question to Rome about this new Mass without words of consecration. My question is the following: when am I supposed to kneel down and adore? I'd like to know when. If they say it's valid, that means at certain times something must happen. Now, when does this something happen? Which makes that suddenly the bread is no longer bread, but the precious body of Christ. We know when it happens. It happens when the matter is joined to the form, when the form is applied to the matter, when the priest says, on this matter, which is bread, this is my body. We know that when this is said, this conjunction, due to the might of these words, which is not a human might, but the might of God, you know, that's very important to see. When we speak, our word and the efficiency of our word is only to communicate a thought. So now I speak, and my thoughts go to your ear and into your head. That's thanks to my words. That's the only thing it happens if I look at this glass and say, this is a bird. Okay. Well, nothing happens. Because it's out of the might of my words to produce such an effect. When Jesus looks at a sick man and says, stand up. When he says, you are healed. When he said to Lazarus, come out, his words are producing what they mean. The same when God says, there may be light. You have this might in the Word of God. And we find it in the sacraments. When the priest says, I absolve you, you are absolved. When he says, I baptized you, you are washed. When he says, the body, it's not his, it is mine. It's not his, it's Jesus. Because it's Jesus who speaks. Through the voice, taking the intelligence, the will of the priest, it's Jesus. And that's really what's happening. The body which will be there is Jesus' body. Once again, these modern theologians, they don't believe. And so now they're happy. Because they are comforted in their thing. At the same time, everything is put upside down. And this is happening all during the time when Rome is proposing us an agreement. Are we ready to agree about that? Are we really ready to say to Rome, okay, you're right, it's fine now, we can have these masses without words of consecration? Never. We don't agree. So how can we make an agreement where we don't agree? Well, once again, if we follow Casper, we can. Because Casper is in favor of the circles which are triangles. I'll try to explain a little bit later on what I mean with that. What I mean with this, now you have the professor of dogma in Vigrasbad, Society St. Peter, who teaches this to the future priest of St. Peter. How do you think that, what will be the reasons why they will stick to the old Mass, if they stick to it? With such things in the head, in the mind. No wonder that they are divided. Well, even best. They have as a liturgy professor, another priest who does not belong to St. Peter, who in other times did belong to St. Pius X, who has left us to join the Indian Cyril Malankar, the very line of Chaldeans. They follow the Chaldea. It's very interesting to see that this church of Chaldea had an extension in India. And so you have a part of the Indian Christians who follow the rituals, the rite of Iraq, of Chaldea. Amongst them, you have against the same problem, you have some which are in the Catholic Church and some who are not. And this father won't join the Catholic part. Then, due to that, he went to Rome, made studies in the Oriental, and there he was the disciple of the very man, Father Taft, who prepared the document stating that this Mass was valid without words of consecration. So these are now the professors in Vigrasbad. Where do you think that they are going to land? Very curiously, about 1 month and a half ago, 5 entities amongst the Ecclesia Dei groups have intervened to Rome, to Cardinal Castrillon, to make pressure that he may excommunicate the Society of St. Pius X. Among this group, you have the Society of St. Peter, you have Campos, you have Le Barou, here of the society, the Institute of Christ the King. We know that very, very directly. It's something very secret, but we know it. And we know also the answer from the Pope, from the sacraments. None of them agrees to go in that direction of the excommunication, but it's just to show what's happening, what's going on. And you may wonder, but why do they want suddenly now to have us excommunicated? As we are already considered as excommunicated, it does not make much sense. But Rome says, oh no, it's not the time to do something like that. So we want the peace. Anyway. In this context, I would like to speak also about the evolution which we see in Campos, and which is very, very interesting, because I may say what happens to them would have been very and fairly accurately what would have happened with us if we would have done the same agreement. So, allow me to give you some facts. I will not give you all I know. I will give you only the things which have been verified and super verified. Before Father Rifan is consecrated and becoming Bishop Rifan, he says in Rome that he has no problem to celebrate the new Mass. That he does not do it because it would cause problems to the faithful. We know it through a Vicar General of Bishop Haas, Liechtenstein, who said it to us. Father Rifan told him that in Rome, before he was chosen, elected, consecrated a bishop, Rome knew that the man they had chosen was ready for the new Mass. Around the same time, in June of that year, Father Rifan is inviting his whole parish to join in the procession of Corpus Christi of the Novus Ordo Cathedral. The faithful will not follow him, but he goes there with some priests. And will explain, if we did not do that, our agreement with Rome would have been jeopardized. Already there you see that Father Rifan is putting himself under the pressure of Rome, who pushes him towards the new. Rome will act very gently, but very steadily.